We are now.
There we go.
Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Okay.
I want
So
to just say it's some people trying to get on the call.
okay.
I have a couple of people that texted me and say they're waiting to get in.
Okay. Reverend Bean will let them in. You're on mute. Are you saying something, William? No.
Yeah, so I was saying I don't have anybody else in the queue, so they should be in. Yeah.
Do you have Tori Cooper? She's trying to get in. Tori Cooper. She,
I just got in. Good afternoon,
she
everyone.
sent a Gmail. I mean, yeah. She said she tried Gmail.
Yeah, I just got in.
Okay. All right.
Hi, Tori.
Hello. Good to see you all. I'm driving, so I'm not on camera.
Okay, no problem. And so let me start by saying this. If you are familiar with, remember that this is the capacity building project. And so in capacity building, we don't want to take anything for granted, right? In our HIV education, we didn't want to take anything for granted. In our HIV discrimination discussions, we didn't want to take anything for granted, right? Everyone on this call is involved in their faith organizations in some way, shape, or form. But even in that discussion last week, which I heard was amazing, and I hope that you all really got something from it. I can't wait to hear it. I need to go back and listen. But we're starting, some of this stuff could seem, if you've been doing this work for a long time, it might seem absolutely elementary to you. You might say, like, I got this part I know. And for some of our cohort members, we know that this work is completely new, right? And that they're not familiar with some of these concepts. So some of the things that I might be going over tonight may be very basic to you if you've been doing community program planning for a while. And for those of you who have not, then it might be new information, and it might be a little bit of both, because like I was saying earlier, a part of what I do as a consultant is to teach this stuff. And a lot of times, people think that they know, and they're like, oh, there's an easier way to do this. We really try to teach evaluation and teach program management very simply to make it really, really easy. From some of the grants that we received from some of your program plans that we already have, we understood that it might be necessary to, to go back to the very beginning of some of this stuff. So again, and anyone who has experience, feel free to add in spaces and places, that's no problem. But here are our objectives for today. First, we're going to look at a program tool called a logic model. That can be used for program planning and program management. And it's very, very, very useful, right? To kind of see your program at a glance and think it all the way through. Secondly, we're going to look at a work plan specifically for program management, and also for evaluation data planning, which we'll get into more next week, but we'll look at the tool itself. At the end of this session, you'll get an email that has both a logic model template and a work plan template for you to utilize. And lastly, this evening, we're going to be talking about your Black Religious Roundtable presentations, which will be in September. There'll be two consecutive Tuesdays in September. We're going to start talking about those. We'll talk about them each week leading up to your presentations. They're very important because everyone, right? I think there's still 2 organizations that we need to talk to, steering committee, if I'm right, that we have not done a one-on-one with. So if we have not completed your one-on-one, then please get that done, so that we can give you the initial feedback that we have. For everyone else, you already have our initial feedback. And so this time of capacity building was kind of to give you some more context, to give you some more information, so that by the time you get to your presentations, you can make updates to your program plan, maybe your program approach, your evaluation section. I'm going to talk heavily tonight about goals and objectives, SMART objectives and specific. Those are very important, because everyone needs to have SMART objectives as a part of their program presentation. So we'll go over those requirements for your presentation in September tonight as well for the first time. I know several people have asked at one point or another whether or not the slides will be available. The answer is yes. I told you I was on vacation, but in coming back, we're gonna basically put everything on a shared drive of some sort where everything can be there. We actually have some other resources that we worked on earlier in the project as well, and we will put them all in the same shared space so that everyone can have the tools as well as the old presentation. So even if you have team members that were not at these sessions that you want to be able to see the other presentations, then you can give them access to that as well. And I think we should be able to have that up by next week. Okay, so let's get started. So project management, project management can pull you into a lot of different places and spaces. Some people are a whiz at project management. They can think about something from the beginning to the end. Some people are just visionary and they could just tell you what the vision is, right? But the minute details of the project, they can't give you. I can tell you this overall, for a lot of the grants and that we read, a lot of the details of your project weren't always spelled out, and I'm just talking overall. So one of the things that we do definitely want to do is to really look at the processes, the methods, right? The skills, the minute things that are going to make your project successful or not successful, right? So what you have available to you, right? And any gaps that you might need to fill, right, on your team. That's where we can come in. That's what technical assistance is really for, right? So once we get to the space where you're actually implementing your project, will be the space of TA or technical assistance, where you can call on us, the members of the capacity building team, to be able to help you in any spaces and places that you need. But you being able to assess, right, what processes you currently have, what curriculums you currently have, what skills you currently have on your team, what knowledge you currently have, and the gaps that you need, that's all a part of project management. Tonight, we're going to look at two tools in specific, right? So we spent the first two sessions, we spent it looking at HIV education, HIV stigma and discrimination. Last week, we talked specifically about faith, right? Because all of those spaces intersect for the subject matter that we're talking about. But the next couple of sessions, we'll be looking at your project in specific, right? And how your project gets rolled out into the community and what that looks like, and needing to know what you currently have available and anything that you need for us to be able to make your project absolutely successful is what our team is here to do. So today, looking at the logic model in specific and a work plan, right, are the two tools that we're going to be able to look at and that you'll have access to be able to plan your project better, right? Because you already have a project plan. Everybody already submitted that, but being able to utilize these two tools, putting them into a logic model. Like I said, I know one organization has already done that. And then also utilizing the work plan, especially tying that work plan into your evaluation plan. Those are two tools that we're using for project management. All right, so let's talk about logic models a little bit. And I did get to cheat with this presentation. You see it flying and doing all these really pretty crazy, great things. I don't do any of that stuff. But because we already have a curriculum for teaching this stuff, I was able to merge some of my slides from class and change them here and there. So let's start with the logic model. So a logic model basically starts with the end in mind. It's the thing that I tell people to do first, right? Before you have an idea about a project or about a program, taking anything out into the community, you really want to look at what you want to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish it. The reason that the logic model is so awesome to me is because it's a roadmap, right? It's a one-page roadmap. And I have seen logic models that are more than one page. And I usually tell people that if they're more than one page, they're too long, right? You have too much going on. If you can keep your logic model to one page, then it gives a really great at a glance focus of your project from the very beginning to the very end. So it's used in program planning, it's used in implementation, it's used in management, it's used in evaluation, it's used in budgeting, it's used in reporting, it's used in every space and place that you can think of, right? So when you plan out your program, looking from the very beginning of what I want to accomplish, what is needed, what am I going to do to be able to get to what I want to accomplish, what resources do I currently have available, including money, including human resources, including partners, right? Including curriculums, that type of thing. It takes all of that into consideration. And it kind of looks at what you want to accomplish and how you're going to be able to accomplish it. It's also one of the key tools to a solid evaluation plan. And so that's why it's also so important, because usually within program planning, usually at some point in time, people are also going to be thinking about funding, right? And anytime you're thinking about a funder, the funder is going to be wanting to think about, you know, how am I sure that you're going to do what you said you're going to do? And that's only going to happen through a solid evaluation plan, which Dr. Sarita Davis will help us we'll talk about next week. But this tool, this logic model tool, that I'm about to show you all is very, very important in your evaluation planning. So think about everything that you said you wanted to do with your project, and think about all of that being presented in one page. And that is your logic model. But we like to start with the end. And the end is usually what you want to accomplish, the actual goals, the overall goal of your project, and the actual SMART objectives, which I will go over in just a second. So just a few key points about the logic model. It starts with the end in mind. It's a development tool, it's a planning tool, it's an implementation tool. It looks at outcome objectives or objectives. Sometimes you might have process objectives, but typically process objectives are not on logic models. I'm going to explain the difference between a process objective and an outcome objective. So outcome objectives, activities or strategies that you're going to be utilizing inside your project. Outputs, your outputs are specific numerical numbers. So for a lot of you, we've already spoken to you in your one-on-one. A lot of your projects lacked outputs, which were specific numerical numbers. And even with some of your outputs, a lot of them might be changing, right? Because some of you got some feedback that you know, the numbers were too high, right? We're only implementing for 9 months. So we want to be as realistic as possible. And then of course your inputs, the things that you already have available to you that you're going to be utilizing in your project. Again, it's at a glance, a roadmap to your entire project. And it helps you with your evaluation. It also helps you with your budget. It can also be helpful in human resource planning for you to be able to know, right? So this is also a sustainability tool, right? Because your project may be in a specific place right now, and there may be some place that you want to grow to. And your logic model will also be able to help you see where you want to grow to. So here is you're going to get this. This is the template that we're going to give you. It's in Word. It's the Word document that you can fill out. You see it says start here and go this way. Your logic model, it reads left to right, but the suggestion is always to fill it out right to left. And you want to start with the end in mind. So if you already know what your outcome objectives are, or your SMART objectives are, what your and objectives, when I say objectives, if you don't know, I'm talking about outcome objectives are usually knowledge, skill, or behavior change, right? That has a measurable value. So knowledge, skill, or behavior change are what we're looking at as outcome objectives. And it has a measure attached to it, right? So that means you're decreasing something or increasing something by this much, by this date. And for everybody, the date will pretty much be June 2024, right? So you have short-term objectives that you're going to be working on. I'm going to go over these in detail, each section, just presenting them right now so you can see it at a glance. Your outcome objectives are on the far right. Next come your activities, which are the events or strategies that you're going to be utilizing to achieve the outcomes that are to the right of it. To your the next left is the outputs, which are again numerical value targets, right? They're targets for your specific activities. For instance, you might target 25 people to be in your class. So say your activity is that you're going to have specific classes on HIV education with a certain group of people. Your output would be the number of people that you want to target and maybe the number of classes that you want to target. And then your inputs, right? Your inputs are the resources needed to produce the outputs, right? So in that case, you might need a curriculum, right? That you're going to be utilizing. You may also need a facilitator that will be teaching the class. You might need space to be able to conduct the class in, and you might need money to pay your facilitator, right? Those are all inputs. You might also be partnering with someone. Partners are a really great input, and we'll talk about that as well. But this is your logic model at a glance. Again, this document will be, I can give a copy of a template that is already filled in so you can see what it looks like, as well as a blank template that you can utilize in Word that you will be utilizing and filling in for your specific project. This document on the day that you do your presentation, this should also be turned in with your presentation along with your work plan as well. I'm going to say that multiple times. All right, so I'm going to go through the sections, the pieces and parts of the logic model in its entirety. And I'll try, it's already 6:30, wow. Okay, so a goal is defined as the long-range overarching benefit of your program, right? The goal is overarching, right? Overall, what are you trying to accomplish? How or to what extent will the program or the organization have a positive impact on the community, right? It might be systemic change. We are talking about 9 months worth of work. So there might not be systemic change, but there may be an overall arching goal that you are trying to accomplish. The logic model helps to create a map for that specific goal, right? So the goal goes on top, that overarching goal, and that goal gets accomplished through the specific objectives, right? The SMART objectives that that are associated with your goal. So here are examples of goals, right? To reduce death from cardiac arrest in 5 parishes of Louisiana. All of these goals that I'm giving you are goals that have been utilized before in grants that we've written before and have been funded. So remember I told you that I took this presentation from the slides that I utilized in our Grant Masters course. And so all of these are actual goals from grants and from projects that we've done in the past. So to decrease prevalence of HIV in the metro Atlanta area, to improve the quality of health of children living throughout the Virgin Islands, to increase student achievement for children ages 8 to 18 living in Georgia. You see how that's kind of overarching? It's specific enough, but maybe not drilled down in its specificity. And it's kind of the overarching goal as opposed to an objective, or what I'm naming an outcome objective that may look at knowledge, skill, and ability in specific. So I gave you the parts of the logic model, right? The goal, the outcomes or the outcome objectives, the activities, the outputs, the inputs. Logic models are drafted from read from left to right, right? And we draft them from right to left. That doesn't read right. It should be from right to left. And we fill in our logic model example in this same direction. So you already saw this where you say start, where it says start, that's where we would like you to start. Again, if some people like to do it differently, I don't think it doesn't work as well when you really start with your objectives going from right to left. logic model is easier. We'll also make ourselves available. I'll make myself available as the person given this specific talk. If anyone needs help with their logic model, then feel free to email me, and you can get some one-on-one assistance with filling out your logic model. I think Dr. Sarita will also talk a little bit about logic models, or how to utilize your logic model also in in next week's session. So let's talk about the outcome objectives in specific. Defined as knowledge, skill, or behavioral change that is felt as a result of the program or the organization. So again, as a result of your program, what's happening? We can break those into three different types. You have short-term objectives, intermediate objectives, and long-term objectives. We're only going to be dealing with the short-term objectives right now, right? Because our project is lasting, the timeline is for 9 months. So the short term is 12 months or less. So all of your objectives should be falling within those 9 months, right? When you talk about program sustainability and how you're going to sustain your project past the 9-month period, then you're absolutely welcome to talk about, things that you might be able to do in a couple of years, or where you might want the project to be in the future. Like, that can be a part of your project sustainability piece. However, in specific for the goals of the project, we are looking at what can be accomplished from October 2023 to June 2024. And that is the window period that we're looking at. So that is only 9 months. So you're only thinking short-term objectives. When we talk about objectives, right, we want them to be measurable, right? It's really, really important that they're measurable. For a lot of the grants that we read, we didn't have enough measures in place, and that's going to be very important to our evaluation piece. So we are going to use SMART objectives, right? This is probably something that you've heard 1,000 times. If you work in corporate America, then you absolutely have heard it 1,000 times. If you work in community development in any kind of way, then you probably have heard it on your job plenty of times as well. So that SMART acronym stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. Right? So all of your objectives, when they're written, they should be written this way. They should be specific. They should have a measure attached to it. They absolutely should be attainable and realistic. Those two things go together, and they should be time sensitive. And your time is already documented for you because it's 9 months, June 2024. Examples of outcome objectives. I'm really going to just pay attention to this short-term one, right? Participants will increase the number of fruits and vegetables eaten weekly by 10% by the end of the program. When you do things like a percentage, which I don't think anybody here will probably do, but let's say you did a percentage, it's totally fine for you to do a percentage. All you need in order to do that would be a baseline number, right? So if you know the baseline, meaning you know where your group started out and you know where your target population started. So if you did some kind of baseline interview or some kind of baseline survey, meaning from the moment that they walked through the doors for your project, they took a survey and you had what that outcome was, then you could give a measure, right? And say, I'm going to increase this by 10% or decrease that by 20% by the end of our project, which would be in June 2024. So it's not a lot of time. So that's why the whole thought about realism and being realistic and attainable is really important. Intermediate, long-term, again, 3 years and 5 years. I'm not going to get those too much because I don't really want to confuse anyone. But I also want to build your capacity. So just know that intermediate and long-term outcomes are absolutely possible and feasible. It is something that you should think about. It is not something that you should think about for this project in specific. I really want y'all to just stay with the short-term outcome objectives, what you can accomplish in a 9-month period. And so for people that already have objectives, then you really want to make sure that you have time framed them by that 9 months, and that it's realistic in a 9-month time period. Here's some more real examples. Increase HIV/AIDS related knowledge in HIV positive women and men living in Atlanta by September 2015. Like, you see how we're talking about increasing knowledge. That is very realistic, right? You being able to present information to someone or give someone more information about something and measure whether or not their knowledge increased, that is absolutely realistic for you to do in a 9-month time period. Second one is 80% of participating youth decrease their risk factors associated with dropping out of school by the end of the 3-year cycle. Again, that's a longer term goal, right? This is a process objective, so I want to just state the difference. By August 2016, staff will conduct 3 professional development workshops on cultural education for teachers working at XX school district. That is more process, right? Remember, I said that outcome objectives are knowledge, skills, and abilities, knowledge, skills, and behavior. That third one is actually a process objective, right? Did this happen or not? Yes or no? Did we conduct 3 professional development workshops? Yay or nay, right? That's so those did this many another process objective might be, did this many participants participate in our project? That is a process objective and not an outcome objective. We're more focused on outcome objectives, but if you have process objectives, those are okay too, right? Because your process objectives will really be looking at your outputs and what it is that, how many people you served, how many classes you were able to do. A lot of that information would be housed in your outputs on your logic model. Okay, so the next space, right? So we just talked about outcomes, outcome objectives, going on the logic model, moving over to your left-hand side would be the activities. So what specific events or strategies will take place to ensure that the outcome and activities are actually achieved? So that could look like program events or strategies that will take place that will lead to the outcome. Activities are anything that will be done that helps to achieve that specific outcome, including your evaluation activities, right? Your evaluation activities are also a part of your activities. If you used any kind of theory of change, your activities are important to understand how people will move from one behavior to another, right? I don't think we, I think we talked about a theory last week. And so most of you could be able to utilize that theory if you would like to. It's not required, but we wanted you to understand the theory that we utilized to be able to write Black Religious Roundtable. It's also important to plan out your activities so that you can include them in your budget and your cost analysis as well. So remember, I said your logic model will have budget. It will help you plan your budget as well. So when you look at your activities, column, that will also help to jog your memory or your mind about any expenses that you might have that might be related to your activities. Examples of activities: outreach activities, instructional classes, webinars, community events, Facebook Live posts, right? Interviews, focus groups, surveys, counseling sessions, all of those things and much, much more can count as activities. Some of you are doing podcasts, right? That would count as an activity. Some of you are doing classes that would count as an activity. Some of you are doing surveys. That all of that counts as your activities, and that should be inside your activities column. All right, outputs. Sometimes activities and outputs confuse people for some strange reason, but they shouldn't. What will each of your activities produce, right? That's the questions that you're asking. So for each activity or strategy, there'll be an output or outputs attached. Outputs are measures of the specific activity. Outputs are products of the activity, and they're specific measures of the thing that needs to be carried out, right? So if you're doing surveys, how many surveys are you going to be giving? If you're doing classes, how many classes are you going to be giving? How many people are in the classes? It's just that simple, right? So for each of your activities should have specific outputs, and those are in 2 separate columns, right? Your outputs are the measures of your
Recording
activity.
in progress.
That wasn't me, was it? Okay. All right, examples of outputs. Number of formative interviews, number of participants in the webinar, number of Facebook posts, number of individuals in the session, number of classes to be held, number of flyers or educational information pieces to be passed out during outreach, a specific curriculum being developed, right? That would be an output. A specific toolkit being created, that's an output. The number of individuals that receive that toolkit, that is also an output. All right, and your last column in your logic model is inputs. What is needed to produce each output and activity. So really that's usually looking just at resources, so time, money, personnel, expertise, partners, curricula, any of that type of thing would be an input. Whatever is needed or necessary, whether you have it in your possession or not. I like to categorize these by things I have, right? And things that I need to access, right? Because then I know what I need to ask for. That's kind of usually how I like to use that column. Like if I already have all my staff members, right? But I know I need to hire a expert on evaluation, or I need to hire a curriculum development expert or somebody like that, that I would just make that note in my logic model to myself of what I currently have and what I currently don't, because all of those things start to matter, especially if you're using your logic model for budgeting purposes as well. And you should use it for as much things as you can. The inputs can be resources that you have or ones that you don't. I just said that. Okay, so examples of inputs: amount of money to implement the program, personnel, again, personnel you have and personnel that you may need, program partners. A lot of times people miss the opportunity to put their program partners as inputs. Your partners are resources, right? They're a resource for you. So ITC in this particular instance is a resource for you. The Black Religious Roundtable is a resource for your organization. Grants to be written, curriculums, consultants. Those are all examples of inputs. So this is just an example of a logic model. And this is actually an example of a logic model. You can use logic modeling for anything, right? You can utilize it to plan anything that you're planning. You can plan an event with the logic model. You can plan a program with the logic model. You can plan, how your household functions with the logic model, as long as you have an understanding of the goal, right? Like overarching goal that you're trying to reach, the specific knowledge, skill, or behavior that you're trying to change in some kind of way, the activities you're going to do, the outputs that you need, and the inputs that you need. So this is an example of a logic model for my company, my for-profit company. Right. So it's not always just used. And I use this example because it's not always just used in nonprofit work, and it's not always just used in community development work, right? It is used readily in those spaces and places, typically because you're trying to convey what you're doing to another person, like for funding. Like logic models are really a great tool to have, to really know how to utilize if you're going to be interested in getting additional funding for your organization after this is over. Like mastering this will really help you in your grant writing, will really help you in your program management, and will really help your organization to sustain. So if you're not using logic models, you should. But I just wanted to give this example of a logic model being utilized for a for-profit company, right? We have some social, we are social entrepreneurs, but still being able to have clear, very clear objectives, like increasing the organizational capacity of DSCA clients by 25% by year 2, right? That's really specific, but that's how specific I would like your outcome objectives to be. Right? As specific as you can get, the better, right? We do capacity building trainings. We do grant masters. We increase people's capacity to be able to write grants. We have technical assistance that we provide. You see, I'm saying 4 quarterly capacity building sessions, 3 board interviews, 12 grants per year. Like outputs need to be numerical. So keep that in mind, right? And then the inputs that that we have, client intake forms, the curriculums that we have, you know, the TA tools that we have, all which some of y'all are going to be able to use too, right? So just take that into consideration, that logic models can be used to plan just about anything. I'm not gonna stop yet because I want to get through this part, and then I'll stop for questions. If you do have a question, don't let it lag. You can put it in the chat, and we can answer them as once we're finished. This part won't take too long. Okay, so the other tool that we're gonna look at is your work plan. From what I remember, I don't remember seeing any work plans as a part of and so I just can't remember. So if you did submit a work plan, don't be mad at me. But in this particular instance, I don't remember seeing any specific work plans, maybe some timelines, but not some work plans. And so what your work plan is going to do is it's going to tie your objectives, right, to your activities, to your evaluation tools, and also give like a time frame of when these things need to be done. You're going to have a work plan for your 9-month period, right? Which is going to outline what's going to be done when, by who, right? And how that specific thing is going to be measured. And again, we're going to give you a tool for that. But your program plan, or your work plan, I'm sorry, has everything to do with your program approach, which for just about everyone, I do want to see everyone be able to talk about, right? So in your presentations, you're going to talk about your program approach a little bit more. How are you approaching your target population, right? Looking at interfaith, looking at HIV, AIDS, looking at meaningful involvement with people living with HIV. How are you approaching your population, right? So you're going to take, there's specific things that you're going to take the clear roadmap, right? You're going to take your logic model and kind of break down the steps to how you're going to get to your intended objectives, like the specific steps. So the parts of the program approach that we would like you to be able to talk about in your presentation, and I am going to give you an outline at the end of this for what your presentation should include. But you want to kind of tell people, if you are rooted in any theory, right? If you're utilizing any theory as a part of your project, then you want to be able to talk about that. You also want to be able to your target population, right? That's a part of it. You're going to give us some information about your target population, and then kind of go into any theories that you're utilizing to help flush out your project. You're going to list the strategies, the activities, right? That's already in your logic model. You're going to discuss any partners or any collaborations that you are utilizing as a part of your project. And then you're also going to have the work plan, right? And that work plan is going to be it's going to be a part of the documents that you're going to turn in at the end of your presentation. So you'll give us slides, you'll give us the logic model, you'll also give us the work plan. And I hope this isn't stressing anybody out, right? But what we want to see and what we need to see prior to releasing the funding is that everyone has a clear plan of action from beginning to end for what they're going to be doing for the entire 9-month period. And if for any reason you're having, you don't have that quite together, then lean on us, right? I'm an expert in this space. Lisa is also really good in this space. She's really great with that. So is Dr. Sarita. She's an evaluation expert. So you can call on any of us. And if you are to, anytime you have a technical assistance need, you can just send an email to that BRRT@itc.edu. Letting us know what you need, and then one of us will respond to it and make sure that you get, the assistance that you need. So the work plan is an outline set of goals and processes that the team will use. So your entire team should be involved in putting this work plan together, because that's pretty much the roadmap that they're going to be utilizing for the entire project for the 9-month period. So for each objective, you're going to write down any tasks that are associated with the objective, and then any subtasks that are important, right? We don't need minutia, right? Like, you don't have to detail every single thing you're going to do, right? It doesn't have to be like that. But milestones and markers for the success of your project, that's important. So again, you're going to turn in the template. We're going to provide a template for the work plan and the logic model at the end of this presentation. And those are things that you're going to be turning back into us. So your work plan should include, it's going to include your outcome objectives, which you'll take from your logic model, the specific tasks, right? So not the activities per se, but the task that's associated with that, right? There may be specific tasks. You might have to, people may be building their curriculum, right? Writing their curriculum, right? That's a task. People may need to create their surveys, right? That's a task. I'm just thinking of all the things that people are doing. People might have to come up with the actual program for their World's AIDS Day event. I'm making, I'm going through my head on things I know people are doing. So those things, like those are actual tasks that may have subtasks, right? If you want to put important subtasks or milestones, markers, that can go on your work plan as well. You want to know who's the responsible party for that task. That's really important, right? A work plan is useless if nobody can use it. So that means that your entire team should be involved in putting that together. When is that specific task due, right? That's a part of the timeline. And then the work plan can also include the tools that you're using to measure that as a part of the evaluation. And our work plan tool does include that, just so that you can start thinking about that, right? Everything that you do should, is that being measured? And if so, how? How is it being measured? By who and when, right? Those are all things that Dr. Sarita can help with too, if you're having trouble with that. Okay. I am going to do this last part and then I'll open it up for questions in case people have to jump off for any reason. So, okay. So preparation for presentations. In September, I believe it is the second and third Tuesdays in September, we are going to be giving presentations. Your presentations are going to be oral. You should have a slide deck as a part of your presentations. Your total presentation will last 30 minutes. You will be before the group for 30 minutes. The presentation, you should talk for no more than 15 minutes, right? Because we're going to spend the latter 15 minutes asking questions and having discussion about your specific project. It's possible. That's why we had the upfront interviews with everyone but 2 organizations. So that you can know any thoughts and changes that we think that you might need to be considering now. If there were thoughts and changes that we gave to you, then we would like to see those reflected in your presentations. And then if for any reason during your presentation, there was some more, like something glaring that needs to be changed, then we would give you an opportunity to change that before you hand it in. Right, but that your work plan and your logic model are the things that we're going to be utilizing as a part of technical assistance, and those the committee signing off on those are the things that will be able to allow you to receive your check. So the things that you're going to be turning in at the end of your presentation are your slides, your logic model, and your work plan. And if there are any updates to your budget, if your budget stays the same, then no problem. But if there are any updates to your budget, due to anything that you've changed, then you should give that to us as well. Your presentation should include, this would not be the last time you see this. You will get a copy of this, but just so that you can know, because I would like to suggest that you and your team start working on your presentations now and not wait until the last minute. So your presentation should include the following: the target population to be served, right? Again, we know that you all are the gatekeepers. You all are the experts on your target populations. The people in your congregations, the people that you're serving, like you are the expert on them. I want you to be able to talk to us about them and why it's important that this is happening now for them, and whatever information you can give us about the target population, you want to be able to talk about that. You want to give us clear, smart objectives, clear goals, smart objectives for the project. Remember, we went over SMART. specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time sensitive. Remember, your time period is 9 months. The program approach. So you want to talk about the program approach, theories, activities, strategies, any partners that you have, right, are going to be a part of that slide or those slides for your program approach. You want to discuss also in your program approach how you are addressing HIV stigma, and inclusion. Like, be specific here, right? Because that is something that for some of us, for some of the grantees, it was, we just we want everyone to be able to talk intelligently about their project and what they're doing in specific. And so we'll be looking for that as a part of your program approach. An overview of your evaluation plan for the project. Again, Dr. Sarita will be giving more information on evaluation next week. An overall timeline, right? How you're going to be spending the 9 months. Again, you don't have to present your work plan. You're going to hand us your work plan. But as a part of your slides, you're going to talk about how you're going to spend the 9 months, October to June. And a brief summation of your project team and their roles and responsibilities. Again, brief summation. I don't need everybody's bio or everybody's resume, but just let us know who's on the team and what they will be doing in specific. And then the last slide should be about project sustainability, which we're going to have a whole class, a whole training on project sustainability. And that's just going to be looking at how your organization plans to utilize, what you plan to do with the project in the future, and any future plans that you have for the project, and how the project maybe keep going past the $10,000 that we provide. At the end of the presentation, you're going to give you're going to answer some questions. And remember, members of our IAB will be there. So remember, that's our Interfaith Advisory Board. Some of them would have never seen any of they don't know anything about your grants. So they're brand spanking new. So, and these are also experts in the HIV/AIDS field, and, people that are doing work in faith and HIV education. So they'll probably have really great questions, right? So just be open, and the thought process, nobody's going to be grilling you. Like, we want everybody to be successful. So just know that this is really so that our board members can see the type of work that we'll be doing and what the Black Religious Roundtable will be producing. And at the end of your presentation, you're going to give your slides, your logic model, and your work plan. My reminder is that next week, this does not happen on Monday. It does not happen on Tuesday. It happens on Monday. So just make that change. Same time, 6 o'clock. Dr. Sarita teaches a class on Tuesday, so she's not able to do Tuesday. So this was the one day that we had to change to Monday. So please just make that adjustment. And now we can open it up for questions.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. We do have a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay, great.
And we have one from Lisa Diane White. And her question is, what is the difference in a timeline and a work plan? Okay,
great question. So your work plan, Lisa, the template that we're going to be giving you for your work plan is detailed. Your work plan is listing your objectives and tying your objectives to your activities and tying that also to your evaluation, right? So we have a work plan tool that's extensive, right? Well, I can't say extensive. It's just it's involved, so that you can make sure that you're using it for full program sustainability and full program reach. The timeline is just the activity and when it's happening.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I'm just keeping that simple. So inside your slide deck should just be like, okay, this is happening and this is the activity that's happening or the milestone that's happening, and this is when it's happening.
Okay. So even if it's a timeline that has like, we will do this on this date with partners, in this, and that's all in the timeline. That's still a timeline, though.
Yeah, that's still a timeline. That's just fine.
It can be I guess it can be an a comprehensive timeline, but a work plan will still tie you back to all of your goals and objectives.
Correct, right. Yeah, the work plan gives us a much larger view. And like I said, I really like this template too, because it helps people, like for people that don't have experience with evaluation, it's looking at your activities and asking, how are you measuring this?
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure we all had that clarification.
Thank you, ma'am.
Great. And we're gonna stick right on with Lisa Diane White. She has another question for us, and the question is, do we have confirmed dates for the presentation for each organization? Now we do have
No,
what
we
I can
haven't
tell
done that.
you.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, but I can tell you just to, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Omi. But what I can tell you, the presentation dates, of course, is September the 11th and September 18th. And but I don't know that we would have assigned any particular cohort on any of those particular dates. I'm sure that more information will be forthcoming. It should be forthcoming shortly. But
Yes, it
Omi,
should.
did you want to add to that?
No, so I just know that we'll have 4 on one day and 4 on the other. The goal, Lisa, is to give each organization a number. And I would like it to, be random of sorts, or people could volunteer. But I'm just figuring that the steering committee will assign each organization a number when and we can do that so people can know whether or not they're going on the 18th or the 11th. We should probably do that, William, by next week so people can make plans. We would, however, like every organization to be at both, right? So it's not, please don't just come to the day of your presentations. We're asking for you to come to both. And these are in person. So the presentations are in person. I think I might have put on that slide. It's not, I think it would be great if your whole team was a part of your presentation. We're not making that mandatory, right? We're not making that mandatory, but I do think it would be awesome, to have your entire team be a part of your presentation.
Great. Well, then with the question from Zariah, you kind of answered that question saying that we would get it to everyone by next week. Her question was, can we get this information by the end of this week, I believe. But we probably will get it to everyone by the end of next week. Is that a fair assessment, Omi?
I'm gonna say that you and I are meeting on Friday and we'll figure that out so that we can have information for you next week, Monday.
Okay. Let's see if there's any more questions available to us.
I have a question. You had mentioned the work plan template. Can we get that immediately?
Yes, you can get that this evening. Yeah, so you can get the logic model template and the work plan template this evening.
And we have the slide of everything that you want in the presentation. Is that correct?
You don't have it yet, but you will.
Okay, because you did go over a slide that said these are the things you want in the presentation. So is that something else?
No, it's the same.
So
No, I was just saying you don't have that in your inbox is all I was saying.
Okay,
but you will have these slides. So yes, ma'am.
So this slide. So you saying we can get the can you leave this slide up for a second?
Yes.
We can get
the work plan template.
Work plan template, and I have a logic model template it appears to be exactly like yours. So is that fine, or you?
That is totally fine. Yes.
Okay. And let me see if it was anything else. So you're saying the presentations are in person and not virtual?
They're not virtual. They're in person.
Okay, and that will they be on the ITC campus?
They will be at why can't I think of the name of that place, William? Please help me. What is it called?
The meeting place.
Yes.
The gathering
spot. Thank you.
Gathering spot.
It's the gathering. It'll be at the gathering spot. Yes, ma'am. Dinner will be served also. So there'll be food. And they will be in person. Yes.
Okay.
And we'll have specifics on whether or not your presentation can be on, like how your presentation needs to be. Just plan to have it. I think we should be able to hook everybody's laptop up to we should be able to hook everybody's laptop up to they have a whole system there. But I'll get those specifics and have that for you before presentations.
And those dates again are the 11th and the 18th.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And we'll tell you next week which day you're going.
And what I think we might need to, because I know I got a commitment on the 18th.
Okay, well, so you
But
have to
the
go on
11th, the 11th, I can definitely, my team can present. On the 18th, I'll have, we'll have a team of representatives there to support other people. But I'm thinking the 11th is going to be the best date for our team to go.
Can you do me a favor and send us an email that says that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And will you have a remote presentation possibilities? Because I will be traveling those 2 weeks.
It was no, they need to be maybe we gotta prep somebody from your team.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be, I mean, you can if you mean, can you participate from away?
Yes.
Yeah, you can participate from away, but somebody at your team, someone on your team needs to be presenting in person.
Okay.
And just as a oversight or insight with regards to that, if you're presenting, if you're going to participate remotely, remember the presentations are going to be on one screen. So if you're going to participate, we may have to zoom you in, and you might have to be in control of the presentation somehow, or we'll figure it out. But it's
no, the person presenting needs to be in person. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes, I'm just trying to, we'll figure it out to make sure that the person who is zoomed in, or if they're participating virtually, that we can see them, or they can participate actively. But we'll figure that out.
I understand.
Yeah,
we didn't
no
have that
worries.
problem.
Yeah. Okay, do we have any more questions? Of course, we're open. If you want to raise your hand, you can raise your hand and ask the questions. This is the time that you definitely want to ask a couple of questions. As a matter of fact, I have a question. I'll kick it off.
Okay.
And that is with the very interesting, and you spoke of the outcome and the overall objective, and it usually falls with the tenets of knowledge, skill, and behavior. And those objectives are tied to some sort of number. But then there was also a process objective, which is an output, which is also tied to a number. Omi, would you suggest that a presentation should include an outcome objective as well as process objective? Is there any better combination? Should they include both, or could they specifically just focus on the outcome objective?
Okay, that's a great question. So my advice, my thought process is for and you don't have to have 3 and 4 outcome objectives, y'all. You can just have 1 or 2, right? It does not have to be, remember, this is a 9-month, being realistic is really important. So there's only so much that you can really do in 9 months. That's one thing. To answer your question, you're going to have process objectives anyway, because on your logic model, you're going to have outputs. Your outputs are process driven. They're process related. So that was the distinction that I was making. For your logic model, for your outcome objectives, I suggest you write outcome objectives, really looking at what you can do in terms of knowledge, skill, and behavior. And again, if you had a process objective there, we're not gonna be like, oh, take that out, right? That's not our, but the focus, my suggestion would be to focus on your outcome objectives. When you do your logic model, your processes are going to be a part of that, and that's where your outcomes are. I mean, not your outcomes, I'm sorry, your outputs are.
Omi?
Yes, ma'am. There's Dr. Sarita.
I just want to trouble the waters a little bit.
Okay.
in preparation for next week, because I'm going to tie in a lot of things that you talked about this week, things that Lisa Diane spoke to last week.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that is important is being culturally grounded.
Yes, ma'am.
And so sometimes a lot of the things that you mentioned, like the theory of change, is very important in terms of identifying processes. And it's like, which I'll talk about more next Monday, but it is essentially, there are the things like you said, the behaviors, um, but in terms of being culturally relevant, sometimes there are things that are important that need to be articulated. So what I'm going to use is the melee that happened, as an example, what happened in Montgomery, Alabama, right? We were all here for it. And I think the primary reason, as I looked at so much of the video, audio footage, because Black folks have never been in a situation where they could respond to an act of injustice without the threat of death.
Right.
So the thing that made that whole situation in Montgomery, I think, so meaningful to Black people was because, first of all, nobody died. Black folks were able to defend themselves. So the point being, that cultural experience was an underlying factor that I'm going to encourage people to think about when we meet next week. So it is like, what are the behavioral changes, but also what are some of the underlying cultural things that need to happen or that are important that need to be articulated.
Yeah.
So in that particular situation, Black folks were able to express their agency. And it meant so much to a lot of us that Black people could show up and protect somebody who was doing their job. And that was the thing that was important, for them. So there are multiple indicators of success. And sometimes it's understanding what is the cultural reality that people are facing. And in that moment, that cultural reality for all of us was Black people showed up and supported each other, and nobody died. That's a success. So in thinking about how people move forward, next week when I present, we're going to be talking about cultural issues. We're dealing with, some of you have presented plans that deal with social justice issues, that deal with LGBT issues, that deal with nuances that haven't been expressed. So in addition to the okay, has behavior changed, but also I think given our truncated timeline that now we're looking at, whatever you do is 9 months. What are some of the cultural or attitudinal changes that are important that would help you articulate as a service provider? Oh yeah, we change people's attitudes or perceptions of something. And so if we think of something, culturally, it's like, oh, maybe people feel more receptive to something because they've been exposed to it. And it's like, okay, so how do we track that?
Right.
How do we measure that? So you have skin in the game as service providers to represent the behavioral changes, but also to speak to the cultural issues that this grant supports or encourages, which is social justice and LGBT rights. And so those are also places that you need to think about in terms of saying, oh, what's the baseline? Like Omi said, what's the baseline for this? What's the data that we need for this? How do we document this so we can move forward? So that's it.
Can I ask Ms. Davis a question?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, you may. But I do want to just, I see, we'll get to you, Dr. Meredith to be, but we have Lisa Diane White. She had her hand up for a few minutes, and then Dr. Meredith, you will be next on the list for sure. Lisa, what say you? A question?
This is for Dr. Srita. I know that last week we spoke about decolonizing the Black body. So when you're talking about like maybe this change that you're looking at, like we have this perception, this reality, this belief that the Black church cannot address HIV and LGBTQ issues. And the fact remains is that in the conversation last week, we began to push up against that process by, negating what has been said about us versus what will we present. So as though, or that's an attitude change. Is that's referencing what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
right.
absolutely. Because every I sent it to Reverend Bean, which is, so I know it's available to you. The idea of decolonizing the Black body has to do with wherever you are, whatever you are doing in your work in this area, that it asks you to think about ultimately, if I want people to be self-determining in this area, what is it that, what healing needs to occur? So for example, where are the places where harm has been done? And we know that the Black church, it's done well, but it's also done harm in terms of perpetuating myths and things like that, society as well. Then the next area is decolonization. It's like, okay, how have these myths or ideas been perpetuated? Perhaps in stereotypes. We have the stereotype of the sapphire. We have the stereotype of the Black buck. We have all kinds of stereotypes that perpetuate ideas around Black women and men's sexuality. And so as a service provider, what in considering these things, where harm has been done, where colonization has occurred, we want to make sure that we don't replicate any of that in what we do. So we want to look at our own interventions to make sure that we're not perpetuating any of that harm.
And that could be a goal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And then I think the other two parts of it are transformation and then mobilization, which we'll get more into next week. So I'm not trying to take up, Omi's time, but I'm going to tie in next week, Lisa Diane, what you started the conversation last week with the colonizing the Black body, and Omi with the SMART objectives, and how do we conceptualize and document what is important? What do we think is important? And how do we capture that data? And we're not trying to, as Omi said, we're not trying to make it challenging, because there may be some ways in which you already collect the information. So we're going to talk about what information do you need that answers your baseline question. Did we change something? Did we improve this? Whatever it is, you are the ones who can speak to what that data is, because there may be multiple ways of collecting and capturing the information. There may be some better ways than others. It just depends on your resources. But we want to make sure that whatever it is that you articulate, that, this is the information that we need. Where can we get it? And is it the most reliable?
Thank you, Dr. Sarita. That was very helpful. And by the way, just as some background information, Dr. Sarita is the progenitor creator of that whole theory and philosophical thinking of decolonizing the Black body. That is Dr. Sarita, who actually kind of propagated that theory. So she's, if you have any questions with regards to that, certainly you can reach out to her directly. And she is right. She did send me an article that she wrote on decolonizing the Black body that I will make that available as soon as this call is over. In addition to that, Omi had referred to video vignettes that we would have dealt with a couple of issues, and one is stigma, and then Dr. Lisa Diane White, she also gave us basic information, HIV, but also in addition to that, Dr. Sarita, and it's only about a 10-15-minute video presentation, she talks about decolonizing the Black body as well. And so you may want to review that article, review the video prior to next week, just so that you're familiar with the subject and topic. We are going to have a resource library, but for the interim, if anyone needs to have any of this information, we'll get it out by way of email, just so that you would have it. And then as a backup, we can have that information on the resource library. And with the information that everybody's a doctor to me today on here, Dr. Panic, she is going to have the workshop, the worksheets available. We'll get that out today. As a friendly reminder, next week topic is program sustainability and resource development. Program sustainability and resource development. And Omi confirmed this for me initially on the notices that we would have sent out. We would have sent it out that it was Tuesday, August the 29th. But it's actually going to be Monday now. Is that correct?
So wait, is it next week? Is it evaluate? Next week is evaluation.
I'm sorry?
Next week is evaluation with Dr. Sarita on Monday. No?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so, okay, thank you
And the
for
one
the correction.
after that, yeah.
Yeah, so what we had on the notices that we sent out was that the session, and I will send out a notice if we need to change that, was that the session with Dr. Sarita was going to be on a Tuesday. And then the presentations, both of those were on a Monday. But now we're going to have—
you're reading from an old thing. It's okay. That's the older one. That's not what went out. That's older. That went out to us, the steering committee initially, but what the cohort has is Monday.
What we have for Monday is community program data collection and evaluation with Dr. Sarita Davis and TOP.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's next Monday. Okay.
All right. So, okay, so we're clear with that. And then, and then we have another question from Lydia Meredith, and then we're going to pass it over to Omi to close us out and have final comments.
I may be moving a little bit too fast, but we were trying to get our flyer out so that we could start to recruit our participants. And we were going to use the flyer, have a QR code on the flyer that would take the recruit to a space where they could give us their intake information, some demographic information, and do a pre-test. And that pre-test all at one time, so we wouldn't have to do it twice. Because we're limited to a 9-month implementation period, we didn't want to spend a whole lot of time recruiting the participants to be involved with the programmatic elements that we have prepared for them. So I really needed that evaluation stuff done tonight. Like we got the logic model tonight, the work plan tonight, because if we're doing a pre-test, that's evaluative, and that needs to possibly be looked at by Dr. Sarita before we put on a flyer QR code that takes them to a pre-test, because the pre-test is data, is evaluative data, and we're going to be doing a pre and a post test on that evaluative data. So I need your advice concerning this matter.
We would like you not to start until we've completed this process.
Okay, everything goes on hold.
Yeah, we got some. That would be my advice, because we would like everything to be approved. Approved. We want to work together as a cohort. Dr. Sarita, what are your thoughts? Or we could talk to you offline too, Dr. Meredith.
I'm not Dr. Meredith yet.
Oh, you are today. Everybody's been doctor. But yeah, we could talk to you offline, but it's what we would like is for us to all start together and to have an opportunity for the technical assistants to be ready to begin. And I could talk to the steering committee about making an exception, but that's my first thought.
So one thing that I know, being at Georgia State, for evaluation, what's considered evaluation, what's considered oral history, you typically don't have to get IRB approval, Institutional Review Board. But I wouldn't mind looking at the information. Typically though, the thing with IRB approval is required if you think you want to publish from your data. If you want to publish from your data, then it would be wise to wait and get its IRB approval. But most things that are considered like interventions, I'm sorry, not that regard. You're implementing an intervention, it is expected that you will assess. So evaluation is not always needed. It's if you're doing research, then you definitely need to go through IRB approval first.
Thank you, Dr. Sarita. Okay, Omi, over to you.
Okay. So am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. That's really all I have for this evening. We can close out in prayer. Just a reminder that next week is on Monday. We will send out the work plan and the logic model information this evening. We will have the resource directory, the resource space online up by I think by the end of this week should be totally feasible. Our resource library. And again, Tori put it in the chat. If you are, if you have any questions about anything, reach out to us. Prior to, again, I do not suggest that you wait until, the end to start putting your presentation together. I think that, go ahead and start meeting with your team. If you have not met with the steering committee, for your initial review, please reach out to us to do that ASAP. And that is all. I can close us out in prayer. Gracious Mother, Father, God, we give you thanks for this space, this time. We give thanks for the Black Religious Roundtable. We give thanks for our steering committee, for our Interfaith Advisory Board, and for all of the cohort participants. We give thanks for the energy in which they are putting into their projects. We give thanks for the people that will become a part of their projects. We give thanks for all of the lives that we are impacting in advance. Today and every day. Ashe.
Ashe.
You are
So-
happy.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
Dr.
Ashe.
Pennick,
Amen.
Dr.
Ashe.
Pennick, Dr.
Thank you.
Davis,
You making jokes.
night.
Everybody. Good night.
Dr.
See
We
all
can
my
say-
doctor.
I need
Asante
Dr.
sana.
Pennick, Dr.
I
Davis.
got mine too. I got my PhD too.
Yes, you're Dr. too.
Yeah, doctor of Zoom.
Lisa, you could stay. Yeah, stay. You could stay. You want us to stay?
No, just a steering committee, real quick.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, no problem. All right.
Peace and love.
Peace
Yeah,
and
you can
love.
stop recording though.
Yes, I'm gonna just not record, so I'm gonna stop recording.